Okay, let's get started. Let's take MTT for that. €5. There has been €25 bounty game, but I think it has been running now for a while, so I don't really want to be. And this guy is basically pretty weird. I'm not actually totally sure what is the situation here. Like, is he min raising or so that it's 120 big blind? So, not totally sure, but anyway, it's quite standard to check call here. Pretty horrible turn card. Improves his range hugely. So I think I kind of have to fold here if he bets. And we have two pairs, so it's still going to be on that board. Just check folding hand. We definitely have some showdown value. Well, that was quite unfortunate. Quite unfortunate we got him to bluff with. Pretty weak hand. Basically just got shot, but got here with runner. And let's take another €5. €5 MTT. Well, great price on the upper right from the big blind, so let's call with the suited hand. We can fold that one as well, but I think it's still fine. We are pretty deep. Price is great. Even here, of course, we only have 4 outs, but we also have quite a lot of implied possibly. So for this price, I'm still going to stick in the pot. But we don't really hit anything. We have the absolute weakest hand. But you might try to bluff here. Of course, if they have the king, they are not folding. But yeah, I don't know. It's going to be tough to get any AX probably to fold. And they might have some weak and also some king X. So. And it's three-way pot rainbow flop, so there wasn't flush draws either. So let's just give up here. And yeah, we have well, €50 game. We can move into outside. Just have to remember to not miss it when it starts or if it starts. Bottom right, pretty crappy flop against the big blind. We have some showdown value as well, so I think checking here is going to be the most reasonable option most of the time. Of course, the problem is that if the villain starts betting, we kind of have to fold here, especially against overbet. But I mean, if we see bet this kind of hand, we are kind of see betting everything. It's always kind of questionable. Do we get like how many AXs are going to fold against single barrel here? So fine to just check and see how it goes. 10-9 shooter definitely hand we want to be playing, and shoving wouldn't be necessarily horrible, but I think calling with such great playability hand tends to be better. And here with this stack depth we could have gone for check shove as well, but now he checks, so we have the best hand relatively often. But it's also kind of dry flop, so I'm just going to bet half pot. Kind of interesting think I think that nick is quite familiar, so I will try to go for thin value sub here. If I check, I think he's going to check behind with absurd amount of better hand, so and he has to check. Oh well, that was crappy. It was crappy stuff. But yeah, I was basically hoping for AX, some pocket pairs below my 10x to hero called here. All the draws was basically still missed, so it was totally plausible. And at the bottom right we have practical nuts here, and bottom left definitely have to stack off with the ace 10 here. Fortunately he folds. I made the sizing so that if the villain had called, we would have had quite decent stack depth to shove the river, like 80%, 85% of pot. In here we actually have kind of a strong hand, so I think we can go for check raise and stack off. Of course he can have better hands as well, but and of course it's one of the crappiest possible turn cards. Well, it's kind of tough to think about what hands we can beat at this point. Flush draws has completed, some random 5x completed, 9-10 completed. So basically we would be hoping that he's floating with some random overcards pretty much. Basically on the bottom end with that pocket 10x hand, I mean, I think the turn river jack is kind of a blank in a way that it's probably the most unlikely cards to improve villain high card hands overall compared to like king x or ace x. Even queen x is a bit more likely overall. And two players here. I think I'm just going to check, and we kind of have to fold if he bets, especially with our stack depth. I could have also shoved pre-flop, but ace 10 will be playing decently well. And kind of interesting flop here. We can definitely bet here. Check call has some merit, but I think I prefer overall betting somewhat. And on the bottom right, we actually have decent showdown value, especially against big blind. So I don't mind to go for check back. We also have the gut shot overcard. Of course, on the turn it's rainbow board, so it will decrease somewhat on his bluff combos. Aggressive fellow. Would he value bet 6x like this, for example? Problem is that we are also blocking like 7-5 type of hands, so suppose we can fold that one. Would be better to basically to have some other a highs that wouldn't be blocking any Well, of course, 5x is good in a way that it does block like 5-3, for example, but it's kind of questionable how many of that weak hand Villain is defending. And yeah, my webcam is on totally wrong place from normal stuff. I forgot that one. Now it's a bit more reasonable. My has once again been add on time on the bottom left. Nephew has been on the computer, so somehow my face was still tears. Well, Queen 4 is especially against 3.5 pp open race, just too crappy. True crappy position is nice, but not quite as nice for that one. And King 8 is kind of hand that I will often limp, and if he makes against open race, I will be just folding. A kind of hand that we can limp call against quite a few opponents in general. It still has some playability. If you have a read that will then big blind is on the tighter side, then of course raising is totally fine also. But main issue against more decent opponent tends to be that they are not going to fold that much from position. So in the long run, we will be bloating the pot more often by raising ourselves. Ace do shoot it also kind of nice to limp sometimes at least. And I don't see any point to really bet here. Let's see how the zoom. It seems quite okay. And against min bet, I think we have to call here. We also don't really block much of his draws. And we didn't get reverse spot. I think it's kind of an interesting spot if the villain had bet, because in a way we can bet on the top right, but it's kind of an awkward spot if the villain happens to check raise, and it's also kind of marginal to go for 3 street. So especially when we have the queen of spade, I kind of prefer to check back, and now we can just call. Against this sizing, I think we could think about even making small raise, but he definitely has quite a lot of 2 pairs, flushes and so on, so I think calling is more reasonable in the long run. And even if he has like ace 10, it's not guaranteed at all that he will be calling if we make like 2.53x raise over his bet. Queen 10 on the top left, pretty much bottom of my range, and sometimes I will open fold that as well, but from the hijack it's still decent. From 6 max game table I was usually just open fold UTG, but in these 5 maxes we can still be open raising. Kind of an interesting flop in a way that it shouldn't be hitting these players' ranges extremely well, so I think I will go for C, but we have some backdoors. obviously hoping that we would get 2 folds if possible. And we got that. On the MTT I went for 3-bet against the button. It has some problems, of course, like if we face 4-bet it's kind of an awkward spot with that type of stack depth what we had. But overall calling will be moving our hand so much on the set mining department that I don't necessarily love that either. Let's go for a bit over 3x. I don't think we have to go bigger because the stacks are relatively shallow here, obviously stacking off if the villains want that. Okay, we got some heavy action, and King 10 is quite interesting hand here. Yeah, Tony's shout here is totally reasonable, obviously, but that King 10 should have been, well, if I was in his shoes, I wouldn't have called on the first place. I would 3-bet or fold pre-flop. 3-bet or fold pre-flop. Well, I was thinking about raising on the bottom right. On the top right we are actually quite deep, and so from these positions I think calling is the most reasonable option. So it will still be kind of awkward situations easily. And on the bottom right we still have 8 outs pretty often. So we don't quite get direct pot odds, so I think we can, well, okay, we folded out. Well, I think it was pretty close. We have some implied odds, of course. It's quite rare that we are drawing dead, and there is some possibilities. Like if I had the 10x, I would quite often play in decent same way, for example. On the bottom right, obviously going for check call, and on the top right we hit top pair, which is most likely best hand, but getting value from weaker is going to be a bit tough. On the bottom right, I just went for c-bet and hope that the villain folds. If I had spade, I would go for check call line. But yeah, if he bets now, it's kind of course we can still beat some draws, but well, and yeah, not trying to value bet in limp spot, especially on the upper right with the bottom pair. Well, ace-8 we can just shove on the bottom right if there is at least no open raises. And on the top left, yeah, I think I go for small c-bet. Overall, this flop is going to be better for my range, but of course it can hit quite well on the classical limp calling range, but depends on the villain, of course, and it's pretty tough usually to have any read about it, especially on this side. On the other table I went for bluff catch here, so I open raised pre. It went check on the turn and will then bet the river. And on the upper right I will go for 3-bet and stacking off against the UTG at least. So he bet here a bit over half, but I mean he's not repping too much, to be honest. And on the upper right we got a lot of action, kind of interesting situation actually. Kind of interesting situation. Well, I suppose this guy can have some nutty hands as well, so I was a bit worried about that. This guy might be one of those guys. Also, obviously ace-8 should be like snap fold at that point. But we also had this one guy cold calling the 3-bet, and it's quite easy for our ace queen to be in really bad shape. Even though this time we were in pretty nice shape. And well, we have some showdown value here, so just check back. Okay, jacks. Well, against the open raise, it's absolutely mandatory. 3-bet shove, of course. But if it was unopened, we have basically small raise or call options as default. I would actually activate these info tabs. So here is some statistics about the MTT situation. On the top left, pretty clear defend and check calling. Check calling that flop. Now we have pretty close to practical nuts. Like, of course, some players might be playing 9-10 passively, but that's pretty rare. And of course, they might have like top set, for example, would make some sense. Unfortunate situation in the MTT, we have to raise fold that one. And this Porkkanamies now goes for min 3-bet. Kind of nasty situation that ace queen off, like ace king I would have gone with, and probably ace queen suited as well. We only have cuts of 2 overcards, so unfortunately have to fold to that action. And on the outside table, this guy donk bets over pot. I think I just shove here. If he has better, then nice line or weird line. Queen 9, and we held. On the MTT, shoving suited ace here is pretty standard. And ace deuce, pretty nice hand on the top left. We have, of course, deuce doesn't have huge amount of value in itself, but we are also not blocking any of the possible semi-bluff combos, and no point to bet really. If he has jack or queen, he's not usually folding. And on the bottom left, I just tried to bet the pot down on extremely dry flop limp pot, so our hand is relatively often the best one. Yeah, I think I still check. It's interesting if he bets that. Could we go for the check raise, because we actually had some interesting blocker cards to notch here, but and pocket jacks obviously 3-betting here, and ace queen I will go for 3-bet call. Well, it's actually kind of thin side, but with the 40 big blind. But problem of just calling tends to be that we tend to get like 3 or 4 way flop extremely often. And readless I will go for a bet here on the flop. The question is, can we go for 3 or turn shove profitably? We also have the queen plucker, which will be plucking some, but this is some random guy again, so I think we can get caught by weaker if we shove. I would usually expect ace king to be 4-betting, though of course it's not absolutely certain thing. And I think the MTD is going to break at this point, so let's take the SNGs, or at least one here. And hi to Gregors. I don't actually know about exact ROIs that much, because you don't have tracking on this site. King Jack we can play either way, call or shove are both reasonable on the top left. I would tend to mix both of those options. And yeah, with this stack depth I just open shove that evade nasty situations where we lane call my small raise, and again we can limp as well, but readless with that sort of stack depth I don't like that too much. King Jack suited we can open shove, and it's actually something I will do here. We can min raise, but it's kind of awkward if the button shove. That can we call with the ICM, and we definitely can't call against the small blind. But shoving is going to be profitable. On the bottom right I should have actually bet a bit bigger. Forgot that it was min raised pot. And yeah, you can't really change the big blind or chips things. There is no third party tools available, and not too much features on the client. On the bottom right, with the deeper stacks, I don't mind calling with the On the top left I decided to min raise. I have to fold against the big blind, but against the small blind I will be calling. It has of course downsides that if this guy shoves we have to fold, but at the same time hand does play really great post flop. Lose that one. We could also lead on the upper right, it would be totally fine. I don't necessarily want to check raise here, there is some merit in it as well, but the problem is that how we are going to do against the range that will be stacking off, so hopefully he doesn't bet the third street. And he does. Limping and betting 3 street, some king X of course makes sense. We don't block too many of the draws, we block like 9-10. Not too great situation, to be honest. I think with the 9x that we block some of the completed straight as well, it's kind of a most reasonable 7x hands if we are going to call any of those. Well, do we get into it another? And in here I don't see a point in bleeding the turn. Really, when he checks again, we should have the best hand pretty much always. So I think we should be mainly value betting. You can definitely have some queen x, 6x type of hands. That probably checks decent amount of time back if you check again. Okay, it seems like we are getting action on the MTT, whatever happens. I was actually planning to check raise on the flop, but the ace is pretty crappy one. Improves his range way more, so I will be just check folding. And classical setup on the MTT. Usual stuff. Queen 9 shooter is type of hand that we can sometimes go for, like 3-bet, and we face click back 4-bet. Well, now we get absurd pot odds to call. So I suppose with that price we kind of have to call. And definitely stacking off against this guy at least, and such a weird spot, to be honest. But we have like SPR 1 here, so yeah, I think we just have to stack off. And we are way ahead. Luckily they were total fishes. On the top right, within a pretty nice hand to 3-bet shove as default. Suited aces. A blocker plus suited hand gives some extra equity. Doesn't help this time. But extremely standard play. And on the bottom left, usually people limping are not going to be really balanced, so against competent player I would be checking back with the 9-10 here all day long, but I think we can exploit general player by being aggressive here. Just people who are likely to limp fold too much. And on the SNG, well, I could suppose we could go for limp and go. So we might get him to fold something here on the flop that we couldn't pre-flop. Well, he hit the pair, but I suppose he's not folding anyway. Well, it's blind versus blind on the bottom left, so I doubt that we are getting that many AX hands to fold, even if we triple barrel. So I think it's more reasonable to go for the check call. Yeah, this could be reasonable check raise candidate, as we are blocking some of the strongest hands he could have, but yeah, I think I just give up. Like, we are blocking straight, we are blocking some of the top two pairs, for example, and stuff like that. On the bottom right, extremely dry flop overall, so let's go for small c-bet here. A lot of benefit if we get like overcard type of hands to fold here, or like, I mean, M-jack and such. And on bottom right, I'm pretty happy to be 3-bet shoving that one. Over min raise 2.5x, and we are like 25 big blind deep, so pretty decent risk reward. And it took like forever, but he finally called. Yeah, kind of tricky hand, I suppose. Once you raise. And a6, standard 3-bet shove overall. A lot of benefits. A6 doesn't really play that well post-up, so it's kind of not that great hand to be calling, but outside of some extremely passive players, we are definitely making profit by shoving, usually. And really crappy flop for c-bet, and not really too much point in c-betting. We also had the backdoor flush draw, which didn't improve. If he bets, it's kind of a spot where we can still have best hand. I think against half pot we probably have to call here. But yeah, we can't really call river anymore, especially when the flush draw completes here. And sit load of action on the outer table against our ace king, but we are kind of priced in with those pot odds. Not sure what is happening. Okay, issues with the connection to Unibet server, I suppose. Thanks for that. This guy shoves again. We folded that a6 earlier. Yeah, those connection problems are usually pretty rare, but this time we got one in kind of bad situation. On the MTT, Jack 10 is just too strong to be folded. And I think when on that spot, it's kind of a thing to go for two street of value. So, and it's nice to have kind of a strong hand here in the check calling range, but now we can definitely go for value, and we are repping kind of. We could go even over bet here if we want. And king queen definitely good enough. We are pretty deep against this player though, so we can still just call and fold against the small blind. Kind of funny flop on the upper right. And here it has been limp and just stab on the flop, so we have relatively good kicker, so I will go for the value bet, and yeah, we can't really fold here at least. But I think calling probably make more sense overall. Oh, Jesus. Well, I'm not going to fold here. They might have the 9x, but considering how fishy these guys are, they could easily play like a lot of pocket bigger pairs like nuts. So this guy to deuce 5. That's what I'm talking about. This other guy could have easily had like pocket 8s or whatever. Oh well. Had to go crazy here with the total air. And we don't need to bet big on the MTT. This guy calls with 5-3 and gets here. Solid stuff, still solid stuff. 9-8 is kind of close on the bottom right. It's still going to be quite decently playable hand to play from the position. And this is type of hands that we can go for bet. If he calls the flop, then shove the turn, and we can stack off on the flop as well. So of course it's not great situation if he shoves here, but we definitely have a lot of 10x jack x's, so this is kind of a reasonable hand to put in the semi-bluffing side. Let's limp 5-8 suited, decently playable hand. So if he makes small raise, we can still flat. And we don't give him the nice shoving situation as often when we have the limping range, and I would say that is pretty decent flop. Of course the problem is that Will Lane usually doesn't have too many strong stuff here, like AXs would usually be aggressive pre-flop. But he can definitely have King X, Queen X, some flush draws, straight draw maybe that doesn't want to fold or something. And then picking the sizing that we can then keep his range somewhat wide, but still shove the river quite reasonably. And this guy 3-bets. If this was suited, I would call, but we can let go of the offsuit one. And queen 9 is going to be decent, accounting that he has been pretty aggro with the shoves. And I think in the NAS it would be like 12 big blind. Of course not, again, great situation to be in overall, but and of course in these games its price structure is 66 less 33, so two-thirds goes to the winner. On the bottom left, actually kind of awkward spot. I think we are still going to make best profit by raising and calling against the big blind, but hopefully we don't face the shove against from him. On the heads up, I decided to go for like 3-bet with the 6-4. Sometimes would do those. So more often I tend to just flat that hand. Do 2 pairs on the bottom right. Extremely dry flop, so we can actually go either way here. But considering we are pretty deep stacked, I would tend to prefer the aggressive line, and we can have some bluffs even in this sort of flop. And on the top left, I will go for semi-bluff. That board will favor our range quite a bit. And we don't have a heart in our range. Also, we don't have a 6 for this hand, so I think this is kind of a most reasonable type of bluffing hand overall. We don't block Will from having like a 6 or harsh draw or that type of stuff. And pretty crappy spot on the MTT. This player calling from the position with that sort of stack depth usually will be hitting that kind of flop quite strongly. So I will be just check folding. I can't, like, outside of 7th here is pretty few good cards overall. On the top right we could 3-bet, but I think stacking off will be somewhat awkward overall, so I will prefer just flatting it here, keeping some of the stronger AX in the calling range, which is pretty nice, especially in this sort of situation that we have some stronger stuff. And we should be able to value bet here with relatively good kicker, but it was really dry flop, so I will keep it on the smaller side. And with the pocket 9s we could go for small 3-bet or shove, obviously, but we were 3-bet folding earlier, so maybe we get some Light shoves now and 10. Now and 10 from the will lane. And I will go for small c-bet and stack off if he shoves. And yeah, other table I went for raise call here against quite small sizing, but he makes it absurdly big c-bet, so don't really want to stack off here, so I think we can just let go of that one. I was thinking about 4-bet shoving pre-flop, but we were a bit too deep for that, to be honest. We do get gutshot, but we actually have tiny bit of showdown value, possibly with the 10 high as well, so let's just go for check fold and try to check to showdown. And at the top right, I think it's quite close. Whatever can we set mind here? Of course, it's not like call 20 from the call 20 rule, but we are also getting quite a good pot odds here. But it's really close, I would say. Like against single opponent, we definitely can set mind, but two players will be increasing our odds. I think I will go for smallest bet here. Do they both actually fold? That's kind of surprising. On the top left, yeah, I think I go for double parallel. Of course, if he raises, it's going to be a bit nasty. We have to fold, but we still don't have like absurd amount of equity, and we definitely have a lot of strong hands on that situation. And flopping the nuts on the top left. Unfortunately, he doesn't bet. And yeah, ace is actually kind of interesting. That could we try to go for check raise here, because ace is going to favor his range strongly. Okay, well, against that we wouldn't get any value anyway, most likely, by betting. But I think if he has any AX here, he's going to value bet, like almost always. Probably should be value betting better queen X as well. So I think we can get pretty nice outcomes by check raising here. And just shoving the bottom right. Don't get tricky with these crappy AXs. Like around up to 15 big blind or so, I will be pretty much always open shoving them personally. Really great price on the top bottom left. I suppose we can probably take that with that price, but even though it's suited hand, it's going to still be quite crappy one, so I think it's pretty close even with those pot odds. Interesting board run. Yeah, I think it's pretty thin to go for value bet here. And he had the queen, but I mean, we don't really have too many better hands. We also did block the flush here somewhat. And of course, he might be value betting some 2 pairs, but also when he makes it pot choice, I think it will be tends to be more polarized into straight or better or air, and can't really fold against his stupid min raise against the limp. And in here we have some backdoors, gut shots, overcard, so definitely calling. Or not folding at least. No point to really bet here. We can't. Going for value, I think, would be too thin. On the turn, on the river, it's definitely closer. That could be value, but I think checking is the more standard option still. And obviously ace king will be shove. Quite nasty setup on the bottom right here with my AX running into pocket pair. But this time on the top left, setup was on our side. These suited aces are somewhat more reasonable to sometimes use as limp trap hand. Interesting flop. I don't see too much point in betting myself. We have some showdown value. So if he's checking, I will be checking back. Also, when he gets free flop, he obviously can have pretty much anything on this board. From 2 pairs, top pairs, 1 pairs, straights, whatever. So it's not really a situation you want to be betting. An interesting spot here again. Yeah, he can have some AXs, definitely we are deep enough for it. If we were a bit more shallow, I would probably hero call it here, because then he would likely go more often for 3-bet with the AX hands. Five would have been decent to protect against the min raise, but obviously after that we have to fold. And with the queen 10 suited, we can check behind, but I think also raising and stacking off is reasonable. It plays so well post-up. An interesting situation here. I think it's quite tough for him to be bet calling that many weaker hands, so I think in this spot it's probably overall better to be taking the passive line, at least from theory perspective, and I really don't know why he is betting turn with the 2 pair though. But I would imagine that he's not bet calling it with it at least. Well, who knows, but I mean the guy is Reki player, but he might be sometimes doing some really fishy stuff. On the bottom right, 8 jack is good enough to shove definitely with that stack depth, and interesting spot in the top left, because I don't remember this guy 3xing, so it's usually going to be that he's not folding that much. So I would usually go for smaller 3-bets, but when he sizes it like that, I would just go for 3-bet shove. But if he had made like smaller normal raise, I would have 3-bet small most of the time. But it's usually indication like if the villain mostly uses smaller sizing and then he suddenly goes bigger, it's going to be more often about him saying straightforwardly that, hey, I have a good hand. And we have to call here with the overcard, and now we actually have combo draw. And we have to fold. Fold, unfortunately, when he shoves here. 8-4. Well, fizzy players at least. Open raise comes from height cut off. What to do with 8-4 from small blind? Obviously call. As default, I like this bet, but again, maybe against with this guy on the pot, we should be checking more, because when you see that the villain calls with total crap on the pre-flop, he's probably not folding huge amount on the post-flop side. I turn. Oh, this time he had big hand. On the top left, I just decided to go for open shove. It should be somewhat plus EV. Problem of limping is that this guy will be raising quite a lot against it. On the bottom left would have been easy call against this open shover, but I think we can't really call with this crappy AX with the caller here. It can be sometimes trapping as well. So with MTTs we are still far from the money, so pretty much chip EV. Chip EV stuff. Ace deuce. Well, let's go for the limp. And I think it's going to be tough to get value by betting, so let's keep that crappy ace in our check call range, and if he's playing tricky with some sort of trips or something, we at least don't lose necessarily that much. And yeah, on the bottom right we have some showdown value, especially against well, in general, of course, from the big blind. Villains should be defending wide anyway. Well, I think on the flop it's kind of a close spot, considering that the villain is raising from the first position. This is the crappy side of the replayer sometimes that just decides that it doesn't work correctly. And pretty much mandatory shove on the top left. Four outs on the middle lane, bottom right. Totally horrible pre-flop play. Shooter ace on the... In here both villains checking, so usually they don't have the king or 10, so I think we might have the chance to steal that pot. And ace jack is unfortunately, I think it's a bit too weak to be calling with this tax distribution. Now this guy actually had the 10. Well, obviously not working against that. The ICM tax is so high on the top left because the chip leader is such a huge chip leader, so even if we double up through him it's not going to help us as that much overall. Oh well, really crappy flop once again. I think we have to just check fold probably if he makes a reasonable bet here. Of course it's 6. Well, nice situation from the big blind to shove here with the small blind flatting as well. We don't really have any sort of draw here pretty much, so I'll be just checking back. We have tiny bit of showdown value. Get 4s. And that should be such super standard pre-flop shove in my opinion. 20 big blind deep. Didn't really expect to see pocket pairs here. 9 queen is pretty close, but we don't have much of difference to smallest stack here, so I will go with that. Okay, well, let's take 10 euro game. Seems like we can't get 25 euro running now. And luckily no runner on the top left, so we got into monies. Need bit of a awesome run to win that, though. Maybe we get double up. and straight. Now we are a lot better shape. And with sevens we can just min raise call. Well, that is decent alternative. On the MTT here with the antes, it's definitely going to be plus EV shoving spot, and I will just call here to keep his range wider. If he has the flush draw, there is not too much point in protecting. He's going to stack off anyway. So only some sort of gut shot is basically something that we enable him to complete overall. That he would probably be raise folding. I think here it's, if he has anything, it's going to be pretty much committed at this point with the stack depth. So I think shoving is going to be the most reasonable overall, and I don't think he will be trying to bluff too much if I just call on the turn. It should be quite obvious that I'm not going to be folding much on the river, but if he has some sort of flush draw, for example here, he's definitely going to be bet calling at that price. King 9, I don't really want to be raising here. If I raise small and he shoves, it's going to be kind of awkward spot, and if I shove, I pretty much never get action from weaker hand. King 9 is just too strong to be folded on the flop. But once he second barrels on that turn, I think we have to give up. Have so many better hands here, so no need to necessarily hero call with that one. Oh, hopefully I folded. And yeah, I think I go for limp shove here. Ace 8 won't have that much postal playability, so would prefer some other more playable hand as limp call. And fucking river strikes. This guy just min bet on the turn, so I think I will go for bet here. And with 10 big blind, 9 queen is definitely strong enough. Well, seems like we are getting the second chance. On the bottom left, it's awkward if this guy shoves. I think we can still fold that one. But at the same time, it has a lot of playability and some blocker value and so on, so open folding would be pretty tight in my opinion. And we crushed here. I think villain call with the king, suited king was totally fine. And on the top left, 8-5 is going to be decently playable hand post up, but it's not going to be profitable open shove against somewhat decent opponent at least. Might be okay against some really tight opponents. And this hand is pretty nice as limp trap because it will be playing post up nicely, and we can obviously call against the preflop shove. And yeah, I think I just stack off. We could just call here as well, but I think it's fine either way against that big of a sizing, especially. And we couldn't evade Willen out again. Ace deuce, bit too weak here. Shooter I would probably call, and some Ace7, Ace8 off or something like that. Well, let's go for kind of blocker bet, and if he folds, obviously great. Great on the bottom right. Okay, well that kind of failed, but we still get decent price to draw. And I think I will try to check raise. Of course he might be checking back, but let's try to be greedy. Because when he raises the turn, I think he's not going to do that with crappy ace, so it's usually going to be stronger one. And yeah, I think here we just kind of we have such a strong flush draw that we can just chip it. And a lot of limpers. The top left, if there is basically no jack or heart, we can pretty nicely shove the turn if the villain calls, and yeah, they will be just stacking off again with these stack depths. If we were deeper, I would usually just flat that raise, but and if we want to slow plate here, it would be better to have like ace queen with the queen of hearts, for example. 10 hearts on the turn would not be, or 2 hearts, like if we call and villain check the turn, would not be bad. Well, tried to go for 100 c-bet, but yeah. This guy 3-bet and he does c-bet, again pretty huge. But it seems to be like his way of doing things, that he doesn't really use small c-bets. And on the bottom right we have to definitely check call here, and well, luckily he didn't go for value anymore with very clear value hand. So it would have been awkward to fold against normal sort of bet, because three expotting. Well, I think I just call here and give him space if he has something weird. Keep his range wider once again, and it doesn't really hurt if the players continue in the long run with that price behind. On the outside table I will actually go for bluff here with the not flush blocker. Let's see what happens. He was donk betting twice. Ace deuce. Yeah. That's the way. Well, that was quite a setup overall. But luckily 4 outs 4 outs was enough. But yeah, we blocked the set of 8s and 9s, so of course pocket 3s make a lot of sense overall. But as we have seen, people can be doing really weird stuff, so wouldn't be surprised if he has like top pair or something like that. King Queen I would have ISO raised, but this guy min raising, we could of course 3-bet as blocker bluff, but yeah, I think we don't really want to end up 3-bet folding that hand necessarily, so on the top left, well, it's this Reki guy betting. I was thinking about check raising, but let's take the passive option. And this guy continues. We are three player still on the turn, so I think we can let go of the King X pretty much. And yeah, he had 2 pairs even, so we would have been drawing almost dead. Well, we still have one of the MTTs running 20 big blind stack, but we are also closing on the monies. Of course, still can't be just trying to survive the monies. We still need to get some chips on the top right. We had clear showdown value, so no reason betting here. And we have the nuts on the river. Of course, when Willem bets like that, he probably has the same hand, but doesn't hurt to really try and get him to overplay some 2 pair or whatever. In cash games, it would be kind of different, because I suppose you would be playing more rake, paying more rake. And you should pretty much never get call from the weaker hand, I suppose. Just giving up on the top left. If we had King of Spades, it would be a pretty nice spot to be triple barreling. We actually do get the gut shots, but I don't expect huge amount of showdown value, so I suppose we could try to go for delayed c-bet. And pocket deuce is obviously going to be open shove. And if there is normal raise, I will definitely 3-bet shove, though of course my fold equity with like 12-13 big blind might be quite low. But if this guy 3-bets, we have to fold without any fold equity. But that spot mandatory shove pretty much. And best situation if the both of them fold pretty much. And that actually happens. Not too chappy outcome. usually this guy is going to be quite honest when he limps. He doesn't do that too much with trapping idea, so I will go with the ISO raised here. Of course not going to be premium hand, but it's still going to be suited king, so not bad situation. Pocket sixes. This guy didn't want to be. Should have been fold on the open raise already. Or was he the one open raising? I know it was open raise here, and yeah, he shouldn't be calling on that open raise in the first place. And ace 10 against big blind 3-betting here. We are going to be behind very often, and not that great flop playability with the offsuit hand either. On the bottom right, we could go for small 3-bet or shove. I think both of them are quite reasonable with that bit over 20 big blind. And on the top right, definitely calling against that min bet. Might have the best hand and have some equity to improve. But we don't hit to anything, so yeah, I'm not going to do anything crazy. I suppose if we want to continue, we should be raising on the river, rep some 2-pair straight type of hand mainly. Well, I don't think Willen has huge amount of AX, but he can definitely have some, and it's going to be tough to get value by betting. So we also have the queen in our hand. Well, king was a bit nasty. And on the bottom right, we should have the best hand. Pretty much always, or split hand. So let's try to. I decided to check for the balance on the top left, but of course turn is kind of a crappy one, because it will help my range and not the Willen range, but I think we still have to bet here and hope he has something to continue with. In the MTT I would call definitely Queen 10, but in the SNG with the ICM tax, I think it's going to be a bit better to fold. And pocket 3s we can just open fold. Again, kind of situation that if we min raise, it's kind of a questionable to call against those more short stacks either. And we seem to be on the break again. That's the downside, of course, if you mix SNG and MTT, that the breaks, you don't really have breaks unless you plan it beforehand by not starting the SNG at some point and then getting into situation. Well, in here we are almost always having the best hand, so let's try to get action. don't know, maybe we should have gone for bigger sizing. Of course, it's also a situation where I'm not really bluffing ever pretty much, but that doesn't really matter. Same hand. Let's try to limp the 8-9. It has some playability. Pretty weird line that he doesn't bet with the 9-10 here on the bottom right. Well, it has some showdown value, but not too much. Oh, and we get into another heads up on the top left. Well, let's go for light raise against the limp here on the upper right. Well, of course we have great pot odds against this min 3-bet, but at the same time chances to hit something that we are happy to continue with this hand are pretty small. So that's the kind of thing that why we go for polarized raising range in those, that if we face the limp 3-bet, it's not a problem to be folding. Yeah, I think I prefer just raising here with the king jack. And went for light 3-bet here. This time we got the wanted outcome, and obviously have to stack off against him with those that price. In pocket fives is pretty borderline on whatever you want to fold it or not. And on the MTT we have big stack open raising. He's usually going to open raise extremely wide here, so we just have to shove that hand. And a7 shoulders definitely can't be folding here. And this is actually kind of interesting turn donk bet, because basically he shouldn't have from the small blind huge amount of hands that connects here. But jack was pretty crappy, because the most likely type of draws are going to be like jack 10, queen 10 type of stuff. That was nice hold on the MTT. So we only need 4 more people to drop to get into monies. On the upper right, I will just see that the crappy ace. If the villain jack raises, it's not going to be issue with that type of AX hand. And obviously not going to open against huge stack on the close to bubble. Close to bubble. I think king 7 is kind of close here. I think I just folded that time. I mean, it's king high, so there is decent chance that it's good, but at the same time, we also have a lot of better hands overall to call. On the top left, I will double barrel here. It's going to be kind of tricky spot for any type of like 3x, 4x hands for the villain, unless he has like draw to go along, like 5-3 or something. And kind of interesting spot, 10 check shooter. I still want to open that. It's such a great scare card on the river, but this is going to be too wide on the theory side. I'm just trying to exploit that he's probably overfolding usually on that situation, sitting out here. I mean, on the top left, when we bluff the river, it would obviously be best to have the blockered flush, but it's still going to be backdoor flush, so it's way easier for pre-flop aggressor to have those flush combos compared to passive player. And no point to be betting on the top left. I think king 7 is a bit too weak on the bottom right. And top right definitely open shoving if I get the chance. There is the limper, so let's just complete. Decent hand for that as well. And we actually hit the 2 pairs backdoor flush draw, so I try to check raised here. We can have some like gutshot type of hands that I would be sometimes check raise folding, and of course some open-ended hands as well. And jack 5 we can try to min raise fold. And 8-10 definitely open shoving. Okay. And then here, I mean, flop went check, villain plays turn passive, we also blocked the nut flush, so this is just going to be mandatory call. And he was bluffing here. I think I will actually go for check raise bluff here. This is something that quite rarely people do as bluff, so we might get some extra credibility for it. And we also had the gutshot plus blocker, good blockered flushes, so if the villain calls and river did complete the flush draw, it would have been actually quite nice to make big bet on the river, in my opinion. But don't really mind that we didn't get chance for that. And let's go for check raised here. This time having strong mate hand. Unfortunately, he's folding. And 7-6, it's going to be pretty marginal open shoving hand, so I'll try to limp. It's still going to play pretty nice in post flop. And kind of crappy flop on the top right. Not too much point in c-betting. I don't expect too many AXs for the villain again, because he would probably 3-bet those often, but he can definitely have some queen X's, some 10 jack, 2 pair. So I think if he bets here, we probably have to fold. Yeah. So one people needs to drop on the MTT to get into monies. Let's hope that I don't get any nice situation to spew it off. A queen 10 I kind of have to call. Then as it would be up to 15 big blind, usually villain range is somewhat capped. So this time he had pretty strong hand here. Really small bet here. I think he's going to often show some jack X, but yeah. I mean, I still need to be so really good that in here with late triple barrels, I don't think there is huge amount of value in shoving the river, so let's just make the call. And on the top right, I will try to pressure the middle stack bubble situation. And bottom right, we have decent showdown value, so no point to be betting here. And on the other table against this guy who was bluffing 10, we have pretty much mandatory. Some ace 4 that somehow got our pocket kings might be beating us, but obviously if he has better, then it's going to be quite a setup overall. Well, luckily he had smaller set. So this time he actually had good hands that made sense to stack off overall. And yeah, I'm not going to continue with the king high. A6 is mandatory call. I'm calling queen jack here. And when you have one heads up on the outside table where we had that set over set. And this guy is usually passive, so I think I will actually just open shove that. Well, actually he had made those min raises, I think, a couple times. Well, I don't know. I just had sort of image from earlier that he's more on the passive side. I think on the top left we have only pot size bet here. We can have some call per draws that we might call. So let's shove for value. Yeah, 10-8 might be plus EV against this guy to shove, but like most of the time I will be just playing it passive. 5-6 on other hand on the top left we can use as raise fold. On the top right we can actually go either way. We have some showdown value, but and nice setup on the bottom right. 7-4 again, kind of hands that I think on the NAS it would be kind of fine to shove as well, but it should be quite marginal one, so it has some postal playability, so I don't really mind to go for passive option. I think I will actually float here. He might try to step here really wide. Let's see if he continues. And he does. We didn't turn any equity, so let's just give up here. And 6-8. Yeah, well, this is actually bubble situation, so I think we can profitably shove as well. It's still not busted, so we can put a lot of pressure on the villain. I don't know actually what are the smallest stacks, but this guy is min 3-betting. Ace King Shooter is going to be strong enough that I would have also just open raised small and induce this big stack to attack, but obviously here against the open raise we are happily 3-bet shoving. Let's hope that we don't drop out as well. Bubble actually broke a moment ago, so we are actually not bubbling out at least. I suppose in those situations you should probably, as optimized play, you should probably take it and wait as long as you can to decrease the chance that you would be the bubble boy. Okay, this time our light race against the limp didn't succeed. King Jack Shooter again, pretty nice trap hand. And we have been quite aggro with the check raises against this guy, but this is again kind of nice hand, I suppose. He has been folding so far, but maybe he's not anymore. Yeah, I'm not going to bet here again. As default, I like that raise, but maybe on that scenario that we had been check raising very frequently against him, it would have probably been better to just check fold, or maybe make some donk bet, lead bet. Ace 9, I will be just shoving. On the top right, we can actually go for check call as normal against normal sizing, but when he makes it 1.5 times the pot, then it's going to be pretty clear check fold. And this guy checks again on the river. We have strong kicker with the 9x, so we should be good here extremely often. And looking good, scary turn card, but held here. Again, a high flop. Pocket Kings doesn't. We can see bet small here as well, but I usually prefer personally to check back. And we can then try to go for value on the later streets usually, and facing check raises at this point is usually going to be less likely. But once there is also the backdoor draw completing, backdoor flush draw, I think going for river bet. So he will often have the 8x, but it's not like it's sure that he will be calling with it anyway, and sometimes he still has that AX even with the passive line. These are kind of tricky spots in a way on the bottom left in my opinion. But I think against half-pot we still need to call. The main problem is that there is a lot of turn cards that we don't want to see and try to raise with bigger exit here. I think we can go for value here, though it's kind of awkward if we face raise, but there is still some busted draws. We could have like 8-6 flush draw, so he can definitely make some light call downs. Well, let's actually move that outside table here. We are also big stack here. I think in this stack setup, well, I think I will actually use it as min raise. It's not that awesome hand that I think we can use as min raise fold to balance the times that we have really strong hands. It seems like I have probably my blood glucose level seems to be on the low side, so should be getting something to eat quickly. So let's do that. Let's go open shove with that one. Actually had better hand. I think there is very big chance that our hand is going to be the best one with the way that the hand went. Well, we doubled up both of them, so now we are going to be in the more of. We could also min raise the Jack 9. I think Tony B can be somewhat aggressive, but the big blind is probably more on the passive side. But as default, I like shoving that hand. Oh well, unluckily running into nuts. That happens sometimes. We're the big stack, but now we have lost like 3 all-ins at least, and will be in quite a bad shape. Well, we should have the best hand on the top left extremely often. In the MTT, it's basically going to be quite much, pretty much cheap EV to final table or close to it anyway. Price increasements will be so low that doesn't really matter. I only have 25 euro essences, so let's take at least 110 euro. Well, our this could have been just check fold as well, but in general, these monotone boards are going to be reasonably plus EV to stabbed here. We usually get enough folds. Or some of the weaker straight draws, for example, might be giving up right away because of the unclean outs and so on. In here we have some showdown values, so and also backdoor stuff a little bit. So we'll go for check call. Okay, we can't continue against that. I think 4-5 is gonna probably call. So it's going to be pretty much the bottom of my defending range. And pocket sixes will be most likely pre-flop shove. Whatever happens, we can, if we know that the villain would be aggressive against the limping, then limp shoving would be totally reasonable option as well. But as default, I like the open shoving with the 20 big blind. Always plus EV, basically evade all the nasty post-up possibilities and so on. This one I would have min raised, but we have the open raise, so pretty standard to ship it. Can't really 3-bet small, and we don't really want to like 3-bet to 10k and villain calling, and we can get some awkward situations with 2 overcard flops, for example. So basically, first position that would give, well, I think this was 6 max, so first position on the final table would be 71 euro. And currently it's, well, as it's red here, 80 or 90 euros. 18, 19, not 80, 90. That would be kind of interesting. Dropping at 19 would give 80 euros and 6th would be 70 euros. Well, I bluffed against this same guy. I think I will just try to check down and see what happens. I don't know if he's folding really anything, but in general that would be quite reasonable hand to bluff in a way that it's going to be pretty much the absolute bottom of our range on that board run. Of course, again, having the club would be better. And clear open shove into MTT. In here, I think I will be just check folding if they will lend bet. Problem is that even if we are ahead, it's so easy that he's going to force us out with some draw he might have. Of course, if he's aggro, he might have just some sort of like 4-6 of spade or something as well here. And let's go for small c-bet here. We don't have any backdoor flush draw either, so I prefer to just try to stab once and get him to fold. Get him to fold some of his equity. I think I go for check raised here. I think he will be bet calling with many weaker hands, and we have decent second pair plus pretty strong flush draw, so and let's hope that he doesn't have better. He's probably going to snap call like 10x here. Well, he folded. Maybe had some draw or believed this time. The MTT Jack 9 suited is just too strong to be folded. But once again, quite awkward situation, because what is going to happen here pretty often is that when we call that he's going to double barrel and force us out or something like that, but well, would he make that bet with Queen X type of hand or pocket kings? We don't block the spade, which is definitely a good thing. He might of course have some full houses, but I think he should be betting the turn mainly if he has that type of hand, but this time he didn't. Oh well, I don't know. You can give feedback. Would you fold that one? The thing is that if we don't call that one, I think we are just going to mainly be calling with some of the weaker AXs that we probably want to lead better AXs or full houses decently often ourselves. I was thinking that he would be, but of course having the spade makes it somewhat. But it's also like kind of drawy board, so I was thinking that, well, not that drawy, just the flush draw, which he was blocking as well, so yeah. If I had the spade on my as kicker, I would have folded it here. I suppose queen 4 is fine. We also think is that the ante itself will be eating a big chunk of my stack depth on each hand, so definitely makes sense from that side as well to just get it in as quickly as possible. And here we'll lay, it was limp spot. Yeah, I think we can use that one. We can also just check, but we do have the flush blocker, so it's not the best of those. Yeah, I think I just give up here. I would have tried to bet if he had checked, but we want to have some bit bigger flush blockers if we want to bluff raise, I think. Well, a full house on the top, bottom left. Well, I think I have to call with the ace king, even if I'm not ahead. There is 6 outs, and it's rare that the villain would take. He might have some 8x, 10x, some pocket pairs, but he might also have some type of queen jack or something like that. This time we actually didn't have 6 outs even. But yeah, pretty fizzy lines here. Well, it seems like my probably need to quit the session soon. I have that nasty feeling when your blood glucose level is too low. So that is something that inevitably tends to happen sometimes when you have type 1 diabetes. So I think ace 8 we can just open shout here. It's quite borderline, so I think res folding is 3 decent option also. Well, I think this is going to be a bit too weak with the ICM side. Min bet, it's also limped pot, so I think I just have to call here with the king. No, he actually had pre-flop trapped here. Pretty weird line though to min bet flop and turn and give absurd pot odds for me to continue any flush draw. Tried to click the all-in button, but oh well. Should have been obvious open shove, of course. But now that we are in this situation, while we should have the best hand really often, the question is it better to check and hope that he bluffs, or bet and try to get king high type of hands, queen high to call? The bottom left, pretty much mandatory call. We also have the gut shot. And I think I will go for check call. We can have better king X's, and this way we have kind of a nice bluff catcher. And he might, well, I don't think he will value bet weaker, to be honest, but maybe it's possible. And unfortunately he had that 8. But yeah, I don't think we can get away from that one. Well, let's go for 3-bet. Once again we have some sort of, like, yeah, you can make cold call from position. It's reasonable play, but it should be with really rarely done. So usually when you see people making these cold call against 3-bets, it's more often the mark of the fish. But yeah, I think it's pretty nasty to continue here with this turn. Of course, it does open quite a few semi bluffs, but will also so strongly hit his likely range. It's usually going to be quite a lot of Broadway stuff and that type of hand. Well, I have a few tokens here. King of Flips promotion. Well, a nice hand to defend here, but flop is not exactly what we hoped for. Pretty much exactly what we didn't hope for. Well, the good side is that it's easy to fold. Flopping some bottom pair, king high, a high flop would have been kind of nastiest outcome. I think of the turn here we can sometimes bet these total air hands on the turn and then bet the river big, because we have way more of the trips in our range, but of course we shouldn't be doing it overly much, because the 8 trips are still going to be pretty small portion in our range. something like 15 big blind I would just shove here, but I think with the 20 big blind we can make a bit more by raising small and keep his range wider. Well, we are already 155 euro up without counting buy-ins from tees. So not too bad short session. Unfortunately, just small cash from that MTT. Of course, it wasn't that big of a tournament, but there was still, I think, nice terrific amounts to top positions. But yeah, for that, basically the last hand, Jack 9 on the MTT. I think pre-flop was pretty much mandatory. Defend flop, we can't really fold right away. Middle pair, and kind of nasty combination when the river turn pairs the ace, so it will decrease somewhat of his combinations. And we also didn't block him from having the flush draws, so I think it's pretty reasonable to call that river. Well, let's complete 6 Jack. It's still, well, not much of a hand, but not absolutely horrible either. And really dry flop, so let's just try to step it down. And that is pretty crappy flop against small blind especially. And I would have bluffed here if I had ace of diamond. Not big difference, but I think we don't really want to bluff all the, well, I suppose weakest AXs we could probably bluff even without the diamond. Just basically on that board run out, a high is going to be pretty much pretty close to the bottom of my range. Let's hide the alarm for a little while. Well, okay, can't read it anymore after that. I mean, when this guy was sitting out, when this guy open raised, it's a situation where Sav would tend to have a huge amount of fold equity. Of course, 8-7 is still so crappy that I would have likely folded, but sure that I would have definitely shoved in that situation. And nice flip win. And I think here checking back is going to be most reasonable. Ace is kind of bad because he can definitely have some AXs, but no point to bet here really. Almost impossible to get weaker hand calling. And in here we can't do anything if this guy raises. And yeah, there was at the start of the stream about the ROI in these games, but it's basically if you are mixing buy-ins, it's not going to be possible to know about ROI in different buy-in levels, because the only data you can get from these games are like if you contact Unibet support, they will send you like how many games you have played, what has been the total buy-in amount and total winning amount. That's pretty much it. So you can get average ROI information, but not really anything else. Of course, if you only play one buy-in, then that's not the case. But like for me, when I mix the 10, 25, 50 euro all the time, it's pretty much impossible to say what has been the ROI in different buy-in levels. Overall average ROI previous year it was I think a bit over 10%. This year has been pretty much weaker, but it was something like 6% I think when I previously checked it. Not sure about the current situation. I haven't asked about the data from the support. Big hands on the both tables. and we get walks on both. Yeah, I go for wind raise here. Do we face the shove? It's still like somewhat decent hand that if we face the call, it's still going to have some postal playability. Of course, no blocker to 3-bet shoving ranges and so on. So bit more questionable open raise. Not sure if this guy's connection is bad or something, but like every decision takes forever. 9-7 is quite close, but I think I will fold. It's really close, like 9-8, 10-9 suited. I would probably shove it here. Or like 10-9 is mandatory, but 9-8 I would probably shove also. Of course, overall, when you get walks, it's going to be great for you because most of the time you don't have nuts to be blind. Against min raise, I definitely defend 5-6, and we can basically shove here. It's nice if we get like king jack to fold, and even if he has better hand, we have a lot of equity most of the time. And let's go for c-bet here, though of course he might not be folding too many better hands. This looks really suspicious. But it would be kind of spooky to ship it. Well, I kind of wanted to shove it here, to be honest. It just doesn't look too believable. Of course there is possibility that he's calling something totally absurd and hits the top pair here, or that he's actually calling some small pocket pair, which is also horrible, and hit the set here or whatever. And it's possible that he has better high hand and check raise calls it for some weird reason. So yeah, I think we just have to give up pretty much. Yeah. Against 2.5 pp, and we are also the biggest stacks here, so don't necessarily like to defend that king 8. On the left table, real question in this hand is that why the heck has it ended on the post-op side? I think this guy has like 10 big blinders, so should have been automatic pre-flop shove. And obviously we can't fold. Suited ace on the left table. Heart ace, nope. Well, 7.5 big blind. Like in the nasties is pretty much mandatory call. I think I will call anyway. It's quite thin most likely, because people tends to be a bit on the passive side overall. Well, both hands we were ahead, but lost both of them. This will be open shove if it's folded. And he probably lost that left table. Yep. Doesn't make sense to 3-bet shove it here, pre-flop. Well, let's use the Junting. got free flop. Well, this is kind of a situation that I think we can check shove if he makes bet here, at least small bet. Well, now we are just hoping for free showdown. And if he bets, I think we have to fold, but walk would be nice. I can't really defend against 2.5 pp. I think against min raise we could call as default if we don't think that the villain range is going to be really trap heavy. Yeah, I will be shoving this one as well. It's not going to be in the Nash, but it's still somewhat okay. We have such a small stack that if we keep folding those pots, then we are quite quickly going to be in a situation with no fold equity. And he limps. I think I will go for shove. Even if he has something like some AXs, we are still going to have good equity. And if we get these small pots or blinds down, then we can get into, well, min raise here with the strong hand. Well, again, betting doesn't make too much sense. I definitely can't fold here with the having the queen of clubs. Lucky assholes. Sorry for the bad words. Oh well, that was the end of it. That was the end of it anyway. Still decent profit from the session. €154. So yeah, not sure when I will be streaming next time, but I will inform about it. At least in the scheduling the stream, if not in the poker strategy blog or something. But anyway, bye for now.